Okay, today we're going to be starting on a new project. It's the school class locomotive from Airfix, the Harrow. And I've already gone through and cleaned the parts in the ultrasonic cleaner. And if we look at the instructions, you can see that it just shows each section of the locomotive rather than different stages of the build. And on this particular model, the sprues aren't numbered. The numbers for each part are embossed on the part itself. So we need to go through and just sort out and organise which parts are for which section of the locomotive, just so we can see what needs doing in regards to painting and masking, and generally just putting together the model, as you have to rely on written instructions instead of detailed pictures and diagrams. So we're going to go ahead and place all the parts onto polystyrene, and whereas I would normally label up the polystyrene with the section number from the instructions, I'm just going to do it with the part numbers for this particular model, and we'll go from there. So we're going to use the instructions, go through and find bits and put them in order, and this should help us later on in the build. You can see that the numbers are embossed on the part. So we're going to start with the running gear of the locomotive, and we can see we've got all the parts separated. We've got the locomotive's parts on the left, and on the right we have the tenders, and that will help us later on in the build, so we can see which parts are what. And there was one slight casualty, which was this part, and that'll be repaired when we come to fit it, or I might actually remake it from scratch. And we can now look at painting and priming. I'm going to be priming with white the parts that have the pinstripe, and it will be this pinstripe that will be masked off to reveal the pinstripe later on in the painting process, and the rest will be primed as normal. And I'll be using two tones of green, the main lighter green and the darker accent colour. And as you can see from the instructions, we'll make a start with the running gear for the locomotive first. And if we take a look at the box, you can see the various colours. You can see the pinstriping on some of the parts with the dark green accent. And we're going to be using this Tamiya masking tape on top of white primer to create the pinstriping. A dark green for the accent, with a lighter green for the main colour. Unfortunately, the decals won't be used because they're far too gone, but for the rest it should be straightforward. Paint in the nameplate, and the front black areas will have a matte finish as opposed to the gloss finish of the rest of the locomotive. And you can see that some parts can be fitted together prior to being painted, which will make life a little bit easier. So the main body of the loco can be put together. The running gear is mainly solid colours, so that should be able to be put together and painted. and just the small parts that go onto the body can be painted separately before fitting. And we should end up with something that looks a little bit like the box art. So that's the parts all organised, so we can now move over to the spray booth and we can start the priming process. Okay, so before we move on to the priming, we'll take a look at the instructions. And you can see the orange parts are parts that have been painted and the green parts have been put together. So we'll take a closer look at them now. And you can see the tender unit has been put together almost completely because it was just basically a big box. I've primed the sides to make sure that all the raised detail was removed. So that's ready for its final priming coat. I've hand painted the undercarriage for the locomotive, and the base plate is ready to be primed up, as is the locomotive boiler. That's been put together and is now ready for priming. And I've hand painted various pieces. The front section is going to be a dark grey instead of a black, because I thought it stood out more. I've done the nameplates. And I've also done the struts for the drive gear. And I've used the silver chrome pen for that. And I've removed the raised detail from the parts that need to be masked for the pinstriping. That's basically where we're now, so we can move over to the spray booth and we can begin to prime all the parts. Before I started the priming, I decided that I was going to hand paint the entire model, and so I downloaded some reference photos off the internet, as you can see here, and with a bit of artistic license I think I've got the paint job just about right. As you can see here, nearly everything's completely painted. The tender car's been finished off and looks quite nice. The main body and the platform for the body have been done and put together. You see that the front boiler plate is in place and painted. And as I showed previously, the undercarriage has been hand painted already. And some more of the smaller details have been put together and painted. And the running gear is ready, and the wheels have been painted and pinstriped. And the bogie wheels for the front are ready for their frame to be put together and put in place. And the rest of the small parts are ready to go on once we've finished the main body of the locomotive. It's going to be a fairly quick build from here on in, with a few more pieces to go onto the body, which has all been painted and ready. And then basically it's just fitting the running gear to the main drive wheels and fitting them onto the underside of the boiler. But before we go any further, I'm going to put the running gear on tape, because I keep pinging bits off and having to search on the carpet for them. We're ready to go for the final assembly, and I'm going to make a start with the cab of the train itself. The first piece in place is the control panel and the firebox. And that just gets glued in place on the end of the boiler. sides of the control panel make the outside window sections for the cab frame. So just make sure that it's all lined up. And the next pieces to go on are the side panels. And they fit in these shaped sections here and butt up against the control panel. Let's do this for both sides. So I had to go round and clean the areas where the side panels are going to be glued into place. Get a more tight fit. So both side panels can be fitted now. With them glued into place, they can be clamped and left to dry. And once you're happy with the side panels, you place the cabin roof on and glue it in place. And that's the main body of the train basically done. And now we can concentrate on the undercarriage and the running gear. But before we do that, I'm just going to put the front buffers on. Another small piece that's almost completed and painted so that I can go in place. Once it's glued into place, add a splash of colour to the train body. Then we can move on to the bogie wheels at the front. And this is basically a two-part frame. And the front coupling is put in between the two frame pieces at the front. And that can be glued into place. And the wheels are two-piece. One side has pins on the axle and the other part has holes. And it's just a case of putting the two opposites together. And there's four wheels on the front bogie. Usually the front bogie is fitted with a pin in this hole here, but unfortunately this bracket broke when I was trying to fit them, so they're actually glued into place on my model. But that's okay, as it's going to be a static model only. So with that in place, we can now move on to the final part, which is going to be the main wheels and running gear, and then we can finish this model off. We've gone ahead and done some work off camera, and we're nearly complete. The full tender is done. And off camera I've gone ahead and done the running gear on the locomotive, as there was a few problems with fitting and the kit pieces, and it took about 2 hours in total to get the running gear in place. It's all been glued in place and it's static rather than moving because of some of the problems I had with the fitting. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go on to fitting the last few pieces, starting with the shields that go at the front. I've already cleaned up the platform to take the pieces. It will just glue them in place. Just like that. A bit more glue. And we can repeat the process for the other side. With both pieces in place, we can move on to the steps. These go at the rear of the locomotive by the cabin. Steps fit just below the back edge of the cabin. And you just need to make sure that you orientate the pieces so the flat part is towards the rear. And it will sit nicely in the space provided. I'm going to use super glue on these because they are a bit fiddly and a bit exposed, so they need to be able to take a knock or two without coming off. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And it will be a repeat procedure for the other side. Final parts to go on are the front coupling and the hoses. It's three parts that are quite small and quite tricky. So just want to make sure that clean out the mounting holes. Something I noticed about this kit is there's a distinct lack of locating pins on the parts and even mounting tabs. So it's been a bit of a challenging build, but it's come together quite nicely in the end. So I'll just go ahead and do these three parts. And the final piece is the nameplates, which go on the wheel arches on either side of the boiler. A little bit difficult to get into the gap, get them in square, but I did have to readjust this piece later on, but this gives you some idea of how it looks. And same for the other side, we'll go ahead and do that, and that's the model finished. Really enjoyed this build. It's been a pleasure to do a kit of this stage and to come up with a good result. And as you can see, I've added a little bit of steam to coming out of the main stack. just to give it a bit of life. And it's now ready to go on display. And so it's now on display on the train shelf with the Union Pacific Big Boy locomotive. And I have to admit, I'm pretty impressed with the final result. I just needed to touch up a little bit of the paintwork, especially the brass and the silver. And so that's the second models for Heroes build done. So we can go across to the Decidetron 3000. And we're going to choose the next model. And so without further ado, I'm going to press the button. The next models for the Heroes build is going to be the SB2M100. So I hope you enjoyed this video and this build. And if you have, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.